All right, so today we're continuing on solving equations with rational coefficients. So I am on page 462, and this is actually part of your homework, so as long as you are following along, writing down what I'm writing down, you're going to get some easy answers. So on number 10, Nora and Ryan are making stuffed animals for a toy drive. The table shows the fabric purchases they made, who purchased the more expensive fabric, and then we have to explain our reasoning. So over in the table, we know that Nora purchased 2/3 of a yard, and she paid a total of $4. So we would take our 2/3 of a yard times the cost per yard, which we don't know, so that's going to be our variable x. And since we would multiply those to figure out our total cost, which is $4. Then our other equation, we know that Ryan purchased 8/10 of a yard times the cost per yard, we don't know, let's call that n, and that gave us a total of $6. So there's our two equations. We're going to solve both of them. So the first one up here, these two are multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide. We divide by the number with the variable, which is 2/3. Again, we keep change flip. We keep 4/1, change division to multiplication, and flip it to make it 3/2. I could cross reduce, and I would get 6. So Nora's yard fabric per yard is $6 per yard. But she didn't get a whole yard, that's why she only paid $4. All right, for Ryan, these two are multiplied again, so the opposite would be to divide. I divide by the number with the variable. So I divide by 8/10. I would type 6 divided by 8/10 into my calculator, and I would get m equals 7 5/10. So Ryan's fabric is a total of $7.50 per yard, because again, he didn't buy the entire yard, he only bought 8/10 of it. So going back to our question, we want to know who purchased the more expensive fabric. Ryan purchased the more expensive fabric because $7.50 is greater than the $6 fabric that Nora purchased. All right, go ahead and turn back a page. We're going to work on number 9. Oops, there we go. So number 9, 75% or 15 of the students in Emily's homeroom class are going on a field trip. 2/3 or 12 of the students in Santiago's homeroom are going on a field trip. Which class had more students? Justify your answer. So we know that 75% is 15 students in Emily's class, and we know that 2/3 or 12 students is in Santiago's homeroom. So we know that 75% of Emily's homeroom, of means to multiply. We don't know how many are total in her class, so we'll write E for Emily. But we do know that 75% of that equals the 15 students. Our other equation that we're going to write, we know that 2/3 of Santiago's, of means to multiply. We don't know how many total are in the class, so we'll write S, should give me 12 students. We could also think of this as our percent times whole equals part, or part equals percent times our whole number, because we could turn 2/3 into a percent, but we're not going to in this case. All right, so going back to solving. First of all, in the top one, we're going to want to change 75% into a decimal, so I need to move it 2 places. So 7/500 times E equals 15. In order to solve, I do the opposite operation, so I divide by 75 hundredths. So E, if I type in my calculator 15 divided by 75 hundredths, I should get 20. So there are 20 total students in Emily's class, and this makes sense because if 15 is part of it, our total should be bigger. Here in Santiago's, we do the opposite operation. 2/3 and s are multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide. I divide by 2/3, divide by 2/3. Keep, change, flip. I keep 12 over 1, change division to multiplication, and flip it to make it 3 over 2. I could cross reduce. 12 becomes a 6, 2 becomes a 1. 6 times 3 is 18, 1 times 1 is 1, so S equals 18. Again, you want to check to make sure your answer is correct. If 12 is part of the class, 18 is bigger, so that makes sense that our whole would be bigger. So going back to our original question though, which one has more students? Emily's class. And that's because 20 is greater than 18. So not only did you have to find it, but then you had to compare it to find your final answer. All right, moving right along. Number 8, 24 students brought their permission slips to attend the class field trip to the local art museum. If this represents 8/10 of the class, how many students are in the class? Use a bar diagram to solve arithmetically, then use an equation to solve algebraically. Okay, so we're going to say our bar diagram represents the whole. We are missing the whole, which is our total number of students in the class. So I'm going to say C for class total. Okay. We know that 8/10 though, so how many am I going to divide this bar diagram into? I'm going to divide it into tenths. Okay, and we know that 8 of these, so this section right here is 24 students because they brought their permission slips to the art museum, and then this is 8/10. So that part is 24. We're still missing the total, so we could figure out what each of these sections is worth by taking 24 and dividing it by the 8 sections that we have. So we take 24 divided by 8, that is 3. So each of these sections is worth 3, which means this section is also worth 3, and this section is also worth 3. So this total that we're missing here for the total number of students in class is 6. So if I took 24 plus 6, I would get the total number of students in the class, which is 30. So using the bar diagram, we found the answer to be 30. If we were to write an equation off of this, we would say that 8/10 of our total class, which we don't know, so I'm going to write C, is 24. So there's our equation. In order to solve, we would do the opposite operation. These two are multiplied, so the opposite is to divide. 24 divided by 8/10 is 30. So there are 30 students in the class. Again, you can check to make sure your answer makes sense. If 8/10 of them is 24 students, your number should be bigger than 24. Okay, and then our last one that we'll do together is number 7. So Dylan deposited 3/4 of his paycheck into the bank. The deposit slip shows how much he deposited. Write and solve an equation to find the amount of his paycheck. So we're missing the total amount of his paycheck, but we know that he deposited 3/4 of it, and we know that this is the amount that he deposited. So we know that 3/4 of his total paycheck, which we don't know, so I'm going to say C for check, is $46.50. Again, to solve, you do the opposite operation. So 3/4 and C are multiplied, so the opposite is to divide. So we divide by 3/4, divide by 3/4. I'm going to let you type this one into your calculator. So if you typed in 46 and 50 hundredths divided by 3/4, you're actually going to get a whole number of 62. So he deposited $62 total from his paycheck. Sorry, he didn't deposit that. His paycheck was $62 total. This was the part that he deposited. All right, so the assignment and what your assignment is for the rest of the day is to work on numbers 1 through 6 on page 461. Make sure once you get done, I want you to take a picture and upload it onto Google Classroom. If you need to go back to the website and watch the tutorial on how to do that, you can do so.